So Merab Dvalishvili versus Sugar Sean O'Malley just took place this last weekend, and Merab absolutely dominated Sean O'Malley, like I predicted him to. But unfortunately for Sean O'Malley, he's now lost back-to-back title fights against Sean O'Malley. And, I was thinking about it, and a big question in my mind is, where does Sean O'Malley go from here? Right? It's very, very difficult when you're in a division to, first of all, lose your title to a challenger, then to get an immediate rematch, and to then immediately lose that rematch. Now, I think it would have been one thing if Sean O'Malley performed better here, if it was a bit of a closer fight, because, I'll say it, the first fight was realistically pretty close. It was kind of 3-2 for Merab, and I think if O'Malley had just landed some bigger shots, he probably would have been able to retain his title. But given his performance on Saturday, which, don't get me wrong, there looked like there was improvements. It looked like he was doing better. He looked bigger. His takedown defense was significantly better. Merab was, able to land less takedowns on him because of that takedown defense. But he lost in a more dominant fashion, obviously this time getting submitted. So I think that Sean O'Malley is in a very, very difficult place in the bantamweight division currently, because the chances of him climbing his way back to a belt right now while Merab's still at the top is very unlikely, in my opinion. I think he'd have to go, given his UFC privilege, he could probably win 2 fights and then get another title fight against Merab. Especially, kind of how shallow the bantamweight division is right now. It is very top heavy, and realistically, there's not many big prospects other than Mario Batista that's kind of on the rise in the bantamweight division. So, Sean O'Malley's in a tough spot. And essentially what I have here today are 3 possible matchups that I think Sean should go for. But before jumping into these matchups, I do want to say I think it would be best if Sean took some time off. I know he took a pretty large gap between his first fight with Merab to the fight he just had on Saturday. And I think he should take a little bit of time off as well, train, recover. I don't think it would be a very good idea for him to come back in immediately, 3, 4, 5 months out. Maybe I'd like to see him competing before the end of the year, and then if not before the end of the year, then for sure early next year. So jumping into this first matchup here. So this first matchup, and this is the only matchup that I have in the bantamweight division. I'll get into why later. But when you look at the top 5, a lot of the guys are already either booked or most likely will be booked, right? Obviously, we have Petr Yan versus Marcus McGee, which is kind of set in stone. We have Corey Sandhagen that's most likely going to be fighting for the belt next. And given the timeline of the schedules, it looks like Song Yadong is going to be fighting Umar Nurmagomedov at some point in the near future. So anyone within that range, it kind of takes out from the possibility of Sean O'Malley facing them, which I actually like for him. I think, Sean kind of needs a good win here. Maybe something he could get by knockout. And the thing is, I love Deiveson Figueiredo as a fighter. I love Figgy. I think he's so much fun to watch. I think he was such a fun flyweight, and I love that he moved up to bantamweight. But his loss, like his most recent loss to Corey Sandhagen, was pretty heartbreaking, right? I think it's kind of shown, and don't get me wrong, Figgy went into that fight injured as well, which was, kind of set him back from the start. But it seems like his age is starting to catch up to him, and the thing is, I don't think we're going to see a better version of Figueiredo in his next matchup. I think that he's kind of on a slow decline, which is very sad to say, because like I said, I love him as a fighter. I think he's great, but I think most likely they're going to end up feeding him to Sean. I think that this is the most likely matchup that they're going to end up doing for him. And for Sean, if I was Sean, I would take this matchup in a heartbeat, because I think that there's a very, very good chance here that Sean could get a TKO or a TKO over Figgy, right? Obviously, the height difference, the power difference, Figgy is a shorter opponent, but the difference between, somebody like Figgy and Merab is that Figgy doesn't have that same physical prowess in the octagon that Merab has, right? So I think even if Figgy were to shoot in some takedowns, given the high-level takedown defense that we saw in Sean's second fight against Merab this Saturday, I think Sean can keep the fight standing on the feet, and I think he would be able to strike with him. Now, don't get me wrong, Figgy is a hard puncher. He definitely is. But like I said, just between his age and his last performance against Corey, even the Petr Yan performance where he kind of got 50-45, got pretty dominated in that fight. I think Sean takes this one, and I think that if Sean chooses to stay in the bantamweight division, this is the fight that they should make, and I think it's the fight that they most likely will make. Given kind of the timeline that both guys are on right now, I could see this fight happening either at the end of the year or the beginning of next year. And honestly, I would love to see this main event to Fight Night. I think that this would be a great, main event to a Fight Night. And if not, having it on the main card somewhere, maybe as an opener. I think, Sean is still probably in the top 10 superstars of the UFC right now, just with his following and his fan base. He's one of those guys that even though he isn't champion, he still has a very, very strong following, somebody like Sean Strickland, for an example. So I think that they're still going to put this pretty high up on a card, or like I said, if not a Fight Night main event. So, that's kind of when I think this fight would happen. But that's if Sean chooses to stay in the bantamweight division. Because like I talked about at the beginning of this video, right? He's lost to Merab twice. That's tough. That's not easy. If his sights are still on the bantamweight title, that's going to be a tough road to get back to, right? So, I think that Sean O'Malley could... hear me out. Hear me out here. All right, listen. I think that there's a possibility that we could see Sean O'Malley moving up to featherweight, right? I think he has height for it. And I think all he needs is just to put on that muscle, put on that strength, get a featherweight-esque build, kind of like a Diego Lopez kind of look, maybe, kind of like maybe like a Max Holloway kind of build to him, kind of put on that muscle, continue building that strength, because he was already doing that for his second fight against Merab. He's already, building up that strength, building up that muscle. And I think a great matchup for him if he moves up to featherweight is against Brian Ortega. Now, I understand that, Ortega is a jiu-jitsu guy. I completely understand that. I understand that, given his last performance against Merab, having somebody with good grappling isn't necessarily what Sean would want to go for. But, similar to Deiveson Figueiredo, I think that Ortega is somebody that is starting to get up there in age. He's starting to get a little bit older, and I don't think that he has the same skills that he used to have, right? Looking back on the second fight with Yair, he submitted Yair, but he also got dropped in the first round, right? That was a close fight. He was able to get that submission, but things were looking kind of perilous for him at the beginning of that fight, right? Then he goes on to fight Diego Lopez, and in my opinion, gets 30-26, right? I think that first round was a 10-8 round against him, and basically got completely dominated by Diego Lopez. On the feet, got dropped by him, And I think if you put Sean O'Malley in a matchup like this, I think he would have what it takes to knock out Brian Ortega. And I think that this is a very incentivizing matchup for Sean, because Ortega is a guy who's fought for the belt before, twice. He went up against Max Holloway, went up against Alexander Volkanovski. He's not a guy that's lost a lot. I think he's number 7 at featherweight right now. Once Ilya and Max leave the rankings, he's probably going to get boosted up even more. I think that with the name value and the status of Brian Ortega, I think this is a very, very approachable fight for Sean. I think the only issue with it is, obviously the fact of Ortega's grappling prowess. There's always the chance that he could get taken down and he could get submitted by Ortega, which, could kind of be alarming. But I think that if he decided to move up to featherweight, this could be a great first matchup for him. And if not Ortega, hear me out here. Come on, guys. Come on. You see what I'm getting at with this, right? Like, you can imagine this in your mind, right? Like, you can see how my matchmaking skills are just next level, right? Like, let's be honest here, guys. Bedtime has nothing on me, all right? There's no competition. O'Malley versus Arnold Allen is the fight to make. I think that these guys would have a fantastic matchup. I think this would be great for Sean because, there's not the worry there of getting taken down, not the worry there of getting submitted. Arnold Allen is primarily a striker. I think he'd keep it on the feet with Sean. I mean, this is a guy ranked at number 6 right now. This is a guy that's probably going to be moving in the top 5 here pretty soon. There is an argument here that if you put Sean O'Malley against Arnold Allen and he beats Arnold Allen, that you give Sean O'Malley a featherweight title shot. Featherweight is kind of a very weird division right now with the current state it's at. And don't get me wrong, I don't think that Sean has what it takes to win the featherweight title. I just don't think that he's that guy or that he's that skilled to do that. But I think that this fight could get him there. I think that there's a decent chance that he could win this too. So if he makes the move up to featherweight, Arnold Allen is personally who I would match him up against. And I think it would be a sick fucking fight. I think it would be pretty fun. I think it would be great. But that's all I got for today's video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Let me know what you guys think. Should Sean stay at bantamweight? Should he move up to featherweight? Should he get a trilogy fight with Sean? Should we give him a third chance? Who knows? There's a lot of possibilities here. Nonetheless, hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to like and subscribe. And I also made a TikTok account, so go follow North Point MMA on TikTok. You guys have a great day.